Plus. Download now.
Hello and a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and you're watching this special broadcast even as in war zone Israel, what we're picking up and learning and trying to understand, decode and unpack is how Iran is now going to step in because it has, well, threatened and warned Israel of dire consequences if the constant bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues. Meanwhile, we'll also bring you the humanitarian crisis that is deepening in Gaza. We'll bring you the chaos at the Rafa border, which at this point in time seems like the only place for all those who want to get out of the Gaza Strip. That's the only point of exit. And all of this, even as international diplomacy, the top diplomats, they're laboring so that the regional escalation does not really happen. But first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, the latest reported casualty figures since Hamas's attack on southern Israel on the 7th of October last Saturday. And the figures are as follows. At least 1,300 Israelis have been killed and at least 3,500 have been wounded. It remains unclear how many hostages Hamas are holding in Gaza at this point in time, but authorities have estimated that number to be between 100 and 150. In subsequent Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip and the entire enclave, at least 2,329 Palestinians to be precise have been killed, with nearly 10,000 Palestinians currently injured and wounded, a lot of them children and women. In addition, at least 53 people have been killed in West Bank area, with more than 1,100 that have been wounded in terms of the tensions that are flaring up in the West Bank and the East Jerusalem area as well. Now, tens of thousands of people in Gaza are believed to have fled their homes and have moved south following Israel's evacuation warning, which that particular deadline has ceased now. It expired yesterday. Even so, today we got visuals of people still moving towards the southern part of the Strip. Now, according to the estimates by the United Nations Humanitarian Office, the OCHA, prior to the evacuation order, it said more than 4 lakh Palestinians were already internally displaced. So this is what we're bringing to you on day 9 of the Israel-Hamas war. The death toll currently stands at 3,500, more than 10,000 people wounded on both sides of the divide, ladies and gentlemen. Also, Gazans have fled their homes with their mattresses, with their belongings, some moving around with their pet animals as well, as Israel prepares for its next stage. Meanwhile, Iran has stepped in and warned of consequences if the bombing continues. More on that coming right up, ladies and gentlemen. And Anthony Blinken, United States Secretary of State, has met President of the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. What we're picking up is also that he's back in Saudi Arabia for his 7-country, 3-day Middle Eastern tour. United States has moved its second aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean. You've got the USS Honda, the USS Gerald R. Ford, you've got the USS Roosevelt, the USS Normandy, you name it, acting as a deterrent. What for? Because there is a two-pronged attack as well. It could be a two-front war that Israel might face. Now, Joe Biden has called Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and Palestinian President Abbas as well. So talks are certainly on. Regional escalation. Will we look at things getting really heated up? Even as Israel issues warning to residents to go towards the southern part of the Strip so that the next stage of its offensive on the northern part of the Gaza Strip can continue. United States, United Kingdom have all advised their citizens in Gaza to move closer to the Rafah crossing. Else in Israel, they're going to be picked up and evacuated soon. All those plans, and we'll talk about that as well. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces is ready for the next stage of operations. Tanks have been mobilized. Soldiers have been amassed near the Gaza border. IDF has deployed tanks, along the border with Lebanon as well. All of that is happening. But now, ladies and gentlemen, Iran has threatened of consequences and has said that it will step in if the bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues. How and why? Let's try and understand that. Now, Tehran warned of far-reaching consequences. Far-reaching consequences, why? Well, if the IDF's bombing of the Gaza Strip is not stopped, diplomats are working around the clock to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from escalating into a regional conflict that could include Hezbollah and Iran. What you're looking at are visuals of how the leader of Hamas is meeting with the foreign minister of Iran. Now, Iran has issued public warnings and has sent a private message to Israel through the United Nations. This is what we're picking up from the Jerusalem Post that has been corroborated on various other websites that are running in the Middle East as well. This private message has been sent to Israel from Iran via the United Nations that Iran could intervene if Israel continued its military campaign to root Hamas out of Gaza, according to a report that was first published by the Wallah news site and later was confirmed by the renowned Jerusalem Post as well. These are visuals of that particular meeting, Hamas and the Iran foreign minister as well. But even as we're trying to understand how much damage can Iran actually make, we must understand what the Iran-backed proxies look like. Now, in general, it seems like there are 3 Iran-backed proxies against Israel. In South Lebanon, take a look at that. The Iran-backed Hezbollah exists. We already know about the attacks that are continuously happening on the northern front as well. Only today, the Israeli forces have struck another post in South Lebanon. On the Gaza Strip, what we already know is that Iran is backed by Hamas. We already saw those visuals of how the Hamas top leader was with the Iran foreign minister. It's a tie, it's a coalition, but the Hamas, which many around the world deem as a terrorist organization. And then finally, in Syria, the entire regime, it seems, is Iran-backed. What's more is that Israel right now has also alleged and accused Iran of sending arms and ammunition into Israel via Syria. This is the latest that we're picking up. The message was conveyed via the United Nations channel, ladies and gentlemen. Diplomats are continuously laboring to prevent regional tensions from escalating, but the Iran-backed proxies on your screens over there. In South Lebanon, we've got the Hezbollah, you've got the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and of course the Syrian regime backed by Iran. Meetings are going on, ladies and gentlemen. How can Iran come in and play the spoil sport here is what many people are talking about. We'll also quickly show you, going on forward in the bulletin, about the United States and how they've stationed their frigates, their nuclear-powered air carriers, the F-16s, the F-35s, the A-10s. They're all stationed in the Eastern Mediterranean, acting as a deterrent. Has Tehran really entered the fray? Pro-Palestinian protests, pro-Palestinian rallies have been held in Tehran for the longest time, ladies and gentlemen. Thousands gathered in Tehran earlier in the week as well. But now what's more, the leader of the Palestinian Islamist Hamas group said in a video released on Saturday that Palestinians will not leave Gaza or the West Bank to migrate to Egypt. Ismail Haniyeh, who also met with the Iranian foreign minister, made the statement from an unknown location via televised address.
There will be no migrating from Gaza, no migrating from the West Bank, no migrating from Gaza to Egypt. And here, I would also like to salute the stance of our siblings in Egypt and who maintains that Egypt is indeed a country and is our sibling and a refuge and is welcoming to the Palestinian people, but not on the grounds of migration or displacement. And neither of us can ever accept that. And I say to my siblings in Egypt, our decision is to stay in our country, so your decision is our decision. And standing in the face of the Zionist plan that is supported by the American administration, we will make it fail, God willing. I highly appreciate, in the name of Palestinian people, these rallies and these flooding of masses, and I call it for it to continue.
Well, the Hamas fighters burst out of the Gaza Strip just a week ago and launched a deadly assault on Israeli civilians and soldiers, triggering heavy bombardment of Gaza. Israel has already told the population of north of the Gaza Strip, estimated to be more than 1 million people, to leave as it threatens to launch a ground offensive into the enclave. The United Nations has come out and said, well, even as you're looking at all these visuals of the thousands of cars that are moving towards the southern part of the Strip, it's actually impossible to relocate 1 million plus people within a span of 24 hours, even as those 2 safe roads that were open were attacked by Israeli strikes as well. And just like other Arab states, Egypt has said that Palestinians should stay on their land as the war escalates, and that it is working to secure delivery of aid into the Gaza Strip. Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, we just heard him speak as well, asking and urging all the Palestinians to not move, to not migrate into Egypt, either from the Gaza Strip or from the West Bank. He met with Iran's foreign minister yesterday in Qatar, where they discussed the Palestinian terrorist group's deadly attack in Israel and agreed to continue cooperation to achieve the group's goals. Now, this has also been confirmed by the Hamas in a statement. Now, during their meeting in the Qatar's capital Doha, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian praised the rampage as a historic victory that has dealt a setback to Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territory. Meanwhile, that's not all. A senior Israeli official has accused Iran of trying to open a second war front by deploying weapons in or through Syria. This as Israel steps up a counteroffensive in Gaza to the south. Responding to a post of the X social media platform that posited such a scenario, Joshua Zarka, the head of strategic affairs for Israel's foreign ministry, said that the Iranians are supplying weapons. The original post also said the Israelis are determined to prevent such developments. To that, Zarka responded that we are going to curb all these developments. Now, Syria accused Israel of carrying out strikes against Damascus and Aleppo airports just last week as well. So even as this potential two-front war looms large, Israeli tanks have been stationed along the border with Lebanon this very morning as troops are preparing for a possible ground assault on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip in the country's hitback for an unprecedented assault on its territory. And Iran, let me reiterate, has warned of far-reaching consequences if Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip does not stop. Tanks and the soldiers have been amassed near the border along with Lebanon. This, even as the Israeli officials have accused Iran of pegging a two-front war, either by giving arms to Syria or supplying arms against Israel via Syria. Now, Israel has vowed to annihilate the terrorist group Hamas. Their unexpected onslaught on the 7th of October, which completely shook the country with horrifying mobile phone footage and reports from medical and emergency services of atrocities in the overrun towns and kibbutzes. Israel responded by subjecting Gaza to the most intense bombardment it has ever seen, putting the small enclave, which is home to 2.3 Palestinians, many call it an open-air prison, under a total siege and destroying much of its infrastructure. Israel's military has also released videos of tanks and soldiers massing south of the country near the Gaza border on the 14th of October, saying that it was ready for the next stage to fight against Hamas in the anticipated ground assault on Gaza. Take a look. Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, said on its website that battalions and soldiers were deployed across the country and that they were, quote-unquote, increasing operational readiness for the next stages of the war with an emphasis on significant ground operations. Well, so Iran has stepped in. Humanitarian crisis continues to deepen. Evacuation is a big question mark. Meanwhile, Israeli forces and soldiers have deployed tanks and soldiers across the borders, even the border along with Lebanon and, of course, the Gaza border. My colleague Manish Jha, who is in Israel, is getting us the latest from war-torn nation. He's also spoken to some Israeli soldiers. One of them goes on to say that he's going to visit India very soon.
इस वक्त TV9 के कैमरे पर आप देखिए कि मार्क 4 टैंक में जो टैंक के सेल को टैंकिस्ट प्लेस कर रहे हैं उसको आप देखिए कि कितना बड़ा सेल है। तो आप सोचिए कि एक तरफ से जहां हमास के रॉकेट के हमले हो रहे हैं वहीं दूसरी तरफ जो मार्क 4 टैंक के सेल से उसका जवाब दिया जाएगा और बीच बीच में जो धमाके की आवाज़ यहाँ पर बॉर्डर पर सुनाई देती है, फ्रंट लाइन पर सुनाई देती है, वहीं ठीक दूसरी तरफ देखिए अमित, दूसरी तरफ आप दिखाइए बहुत सारे जो टैंक मैन हैं वो एक एक सेल को लेकर जा रहे हैं और उसको अपने अपने टैंकों में। तो देखिए कभी भी शुरू हो सकता है ये ऑपरेशन। कुछ घंटे के बाद हमास पर को नेस्तनाबूद करने के लिए ये ऑपरेशन जो होगा उसके लिए देखिए अभी किस तरीके से इस टैंक में जो टैंकिस्ट हैं वो सेल को प्लेस कर रहे हैं ताकि एक साथ अटैक किया जा सकता है। आज की रात भारी पड़ सकती है हमास पर, आज की रात गाजा पट्टी पर भारी होगी। उसका सबसे बड़ा सबूत यही है कि सोल्जर अपने हिसाब से तैयारी करके उन्होंने रख लिया है। बस एक सिग्नल का इंतजार है, जैसे ही वो सिग्नल मिलेगा और ये कूच कर पड़ेंगे गाजा पट्टी में दुनिया के सबसे खतरनाक ऑपरेशन को अंजाम देने के लिए, जिसके बाद जैसा कि IDF का कहना है कि फिर 100 साल तक कोई भी इजराइल की सरजमी पर आक्रमण करने का हिम्मत नहीं जुटा पाएगा। यहाँ पर हम आपको उन सोल्जर्स को भी दिखाएंगे, उनसे बात भी करेंगे और उनसे जानने की कोशिश करेंगे कि ग्राउंड ऑपरेशन करने से पहले वो क्या सोच रहे हैं। तो चलिए सबसे पहले मुलाकात करते हैं, बात करते हैं इसमें। हाय, दिस इज मनीष झा, आई एम फ्रॉम इंडिया।
Hi, Gabriel.
So Gabriel, you are here and any moment you can go for war. So before coming here, what you were doing?
Before coming here, I was working in an accountant's office, and I was doing some accounting.
So basically, you are an accountant, and then when your country called you, then you are here.
Yes, that's very correct.
Hi sir, what's your good name?
Micha.
Micha. And before coming here, what you were doing?
I'm a school teacher. I teach.
School teacher.
Yes, I teach civic studies and mathematics to the 10th grade.
And now you are having weapon.
I'm having a weapon because that's what my country needs. I hear the call and I have to come here. Not something that I really want to do, but something that I have to do.
You know, I was in Russia last year. I saw lots of Russian citizens were leaving the country. But when I was coming to Israel, I saw lots of Israeli persons were coming back to to Israel. So do you think that this is the specialty of all Israelis? Whenever your country needs you, you are here.
Yes, as we see by the statistics, reserve soldiers are being 150% of reserve soldiers arrived. For myself, I didn't even receive a formal invitation to come here. When I saw the situation on Saturday, I took my uniform, took my bag, packed it, and although we don't have public transportation on Saturday, I asked my father to take me right down here.
Oh my God! So normally, how much time you get when you call for the duty?
It really depends. It varies. We were called up straight away. I was called up straight away, but it depends on people and it depends on the situation.
So both of you have a first experience to come at the ground zero, like Operation Zone.
Again, I'm sorry.
My question is that both of you have a first experience to do duty at Operation Zone.
Well, I didn't take any part on any formal operation. We served in the regular forces, you know, all the only the batash,
Daily operational
daily
duty.
operational defense missions. Yeah, that's what we did.
My question is, before coming to war zone, what was your job? Like what you
My
were
job
doing?
is to prepare now for the next step. I don't know what we're going to do. I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
But we are prepared, like you see, and that's all. Israel going to win this war. Okay. All the terror going to.
Okay, and you were saying me that you have some connection with India. So please tell us, what is your connection with India?
What? I didn't.
The
understand.
India link. What is your connection with India?
My father born in India.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember which city,
Uh-huh.
but he's born in India, and you know, I have a big connection to India.
Oh, great. So have you visited India?
Not because I'm here,
Uh-huh.
but after I'm
After
get
war,
out,
you will visit India.
Yeah, I will visit, and maybe we sit on a cup of coffee one
Oh,
day.
great. Good
Thank
to
you
know.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm just asking, so when you got information that you have to come here, so what was your reaction, your family's reaction?
So we don't have to come here because we are instructors, we are not combat soldiers.
Uh-huh.
But when everything started, of course we wanted to come and help. And our families are worried, I think everyone is worried. But we know we have to do this, we have to help. So we are here.
Well, now coming back to international diplomacy, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian and his Syrian counterpart Faisal Mikdad on Friday expressed solidarity with the Palestinian people in protecting their legitimate rights and called for an immediate halt of Israeli military operations in Gaza. Abdollahian visited Damascus, the capital of Syria, for talks with his Syrian counterpart Faisal Mikdad, this regarding the escalating conflict. Now, during the meeting, both the leaders expressed their unwavering support for the legitimate struggle of the Palestinian people against the Israeli military operations and their strong opposition to the Israeli airstrikes targeting civilians and civilian settlements in the Gaza Strip. At a joint press conference held after the meeting, Mikdad emphasized that the gravity of the situation primarily stems from Israel's disregard for the rights of the Palestinian people and its persistent aggression and oppression. Echoing Mikdad's remarks, Abdollahian stressed the urgent need for Israel to immediately halt its military operations in and across the Gaza Strip. And if that's not all, another bloc is meeting up. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he met with UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed in Abu Dhabi yesterday during a regional visit aimed at preventing the Israel-Hamas conflict from widening. Now, the stop in Abu Dhabi was part of Blinken's 7-country Middle East tour. The US official has also sought China's cooperation in preventing the conflict from widening into a bigger war during a phone call with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Washington is determined to ensure Iran and Iran-backed groups such as Lebanon's Hezbollah do not enter the conflict. We've also got visuals of how he's met with various other leaders in the United Arab Emirates and in Saudi Arabia as well. What we're picking up latest is that he is back in Saudi Arabia after a brief and short visit to Abu Dhabi. Now, Israel has vowed to annihilate the Hamas terrorist group that controls Gaza. This all in retaliation for the rampage by the fighters who stormed through the Israeli towns just a week ago, gunning down civilians and making off with scores of hostages. Some 1,300 people were killed in the worst attack on civilians in Israel's history, ladies and gentlemen. But Blinken has returned to Saudi Arabia after a brief visit to the UAE. What we're getting are visuals of the Secretary of State of the United States of America, coming back to Saudi Arabia. Now, it's important how Saudi Arabia and Israel and their peace, it's important for India's economic corridor as well. It's important for Europe and the United States that that corridor also becomes a reality, ladies and gentlemen. What he says that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and I, that's Antony Blinken, met today in Riyadh and discussed the Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel. So after meeting with the president, he then later met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as well. And even as Israel prepares for a possible ground invasion in northern Gaza, it could happen tonight, could happen in a couple of days, could happen in a couple of hours. Tensions are escalating and high. Its most consequential ally, the United States, is moving to support the war effort against Hamas. This aid involves the provision of military aid such as interceptors for the Iron Dome system, smaller diameter bombs and JDAM kits that can convert dumb bombs into smart bombs that can be guided onto targets. Now, the US has already moved the USS Gerald R. Ford and its carrier strike group into the region while reinforcing its standing fleet of warplanes in West Asia, namely the A-10s, F-15s, the F-16s, the F-35s. And to add to this, a second carrier strike group is reportedly on the way to the eastern Mediterranean. Now, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower and its accompanying fleet, alongside existing US assets in the region, USS Normandy, USS Honda, USS Gerald R. Ford, also nuclear powered by the way, will reinforce the warning given out by Joe Biden that other nations, especially Iran and Lebanon, should not try and take advantage of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The expanded military presence in the United States has raised concerns that the conflict between Hamas and Israel will become a wider regional conflict involving the likes of Iran and Lebanon, two countries that support Hamas. An Israeli cargo plane also landed back in Israel, delivering initial shipment of advanced weaponry from the United States to Israel. The equipment was procured and brought to Israel by the Israel's Ministry of Defense's DOPP. Meanwhile, looking at the humanitarian crisis, even as it widens, there is no supply of food. There is shortage of electricity, there is absolutely no energy, and in those kind of situations, everybody is making a run for the Rafa border. The Rafa border, the crossing with Egypt. It's on the southern tip, it's on the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And Israel prepares for a potential invasion of Gaza, the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt, standing as the sole feasible means for evacuating people from the conflict zone, ladies and gentlemen. Nonetheless, it remains uncertain whether this crossing will be functional and accessible to refugees. The Rafah border is currently closed. It leads from the Gaza Strip to the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, and Egypt strictly controls access to its territory. They simply don't want a humanitarian crisis right at their doorstep, which is why they have placed trucks on the other side with enough relief aid for all the Gazans in need. They don't want a flood of refugees. It's not surprising, so to speak, because it's always been Egypt's position. They help with aid, however, don't want to deal with millions of people. Experts say people will not be allowed to enter Egypt in large numbers for sure. Besides, Egypt also has a security situation in Sinai. Lots of anti-government groups. In the past, Egypt had accused of the Hamas of helping and sheltering such groups. The Rafah border also extends downward, making it difficult for Hamas to build its tunnel structure under the border. Now, do remember, Israel dropped bombs near the crossing so that it's more reason for the pass to be difficult to access. Now that the United States has its citizens in Gaza, not just possible hostages, dual American Palestinian citizens, the Americans will not just let them die. So it's negotiating a safe passage with Egypt. On the other hand, stand those various and long lines of trucks with the relief aid. But this probably will not allow other millions of people stuck on the strip to leave. Apart from the United States, the United Kingdom has also asked their citizens to get closer to the Rafah border so that they can escape when Egypt allows people to cross over. They can stay closer to the Rafah border in the south while Israel bombs and shoots the northern part of the Gaza Strip.
I just find bombs and I find dead people, and like maybe one day I'll end up.
And take a look at this, the truck full of relief aid standing on the other side. New aid flights have arrived in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula only yesterday, where relief materials are being held until safe passage for the delivery into nearby Gaza Strip can be secured. Egypt says its side of the Rafah crossing that connects Sinai with the Gaza Strip remains open, though traffic has been halted for several days because of Israeli bombardments on the Palestinian side of the border. An Egyptian security source stated that Egyptian security forces have been reinforcing security on their side of the border, including by moving concrete barriers, but reports that they were sealing off the crossing were incorrect. The crossing is the main exit for the Gaza Strip's 2.3 million residents that is not controlled by Israel. Israel and Egypt have upheld a blockade on the enclave, tightly controlling movement of goods and people since Palestinian Islamist group Hamas took control there in 2007. 2 aid flights, including one from Turkey, arrived at Al Arish, about 45 kilometers from the Gaza border, bringing the total number of planes that have arrived this week carrying humanitarian relief for the Gaza Strip to at least 5 planes. Latest in terms of the airstrikes held at the hands of the Israeli Defense Forces. Over the course of the day, the IDF continued to strike Hamas military targets in the Gaza Strip, including in Jabalia, Zaytun, Al-Furqan and Beit Hanun. The targets that were struck include terror operatives, operational command centers and dozens of mortar shell launchers. During the evening, an IDF fighter jet located a building containing a number of terrorists and killed the terrorist squad completely. Additionally, during the afternoon, the IDF identified a number of Hamas operatives exiting a terror tunnel in the Gaza Strip. An IDF aircraft was mobilized and it killed the terrorist and struck the terror tunnel completely, blocking it. The IDF continues to target Hamas terrorist organizations and the operatives and degrade their capabilities. Meanwhile, even as we're bringing you across those visuals, following the shooting towards an IDF military post on the Lebanese border, the Israel Defense Force is continuing to strike in the area. Israel has also declared a zone within 4 kilometers of the Lebanese border off limits to public access. You're taking a look at the IDF striking a particular target in Lebanon. And Lebanon's Hezbollah has claimed responsibility for a missile attack on Israel's Shtula, a farming community that killed 1 civilian and injured other 3. Explosions and black smoke were seen on Gaza this very morning, which was the 9th consecutive day as smoke billows and thick plumes of smoke rose above the Gaza skyline. Gunfire was also heard near the northeastern border of the Gaza Strip. Now, Israeli troops prepared throughout the day today for a ground assault on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip as the country hit back for the unprecedented assault on its territory. Israel has vowed to annihilate the terrorist group Hamas. Meanwhile, even as that constant bombardment continues, residents of Khan Yunis searched through the rubble of a building destroyed by an Israeli airstrike on Saturday as hope diminishes to find the survivors.
It was an extremely strong explosion. We were surprised as we were asleep, my children, wife and I. When we woke up, we saw that my home and my brother's house were damaged, while the neighbours' houses had collapsed. We rushed to where the strike hit, and were surprised to see that a 3-story building had collapsed, and there were martyrs under the rubble. We called the medics and bulldozers to remove the rubble. Martyrs are stuck under the rubble, and until now, neither us, nor the medics, nor the civil defence are able to take them out.
And even as we're bringing you these new drone footages that have been taken in a Gaza neighborhood that show excavators working to remove rubble from a collapsed building site in a residential area. Again, the operative part here being that it was a residential area. These are visuals from today, ladies and gentlemen. People are standing, watching over the work next to the nearby greenhouses that were also partially damaged, even as the constant bombardment of the Gaza Strip continues at the hands of the Israeli Defense Forces. And because of that constant bombardment, thousands of Palestinians fled the north of the Gaza Strip ever since yesterday. That deadline has in fact expired, but people are still traveling from the North Gaza to the south, from the path of an expected Israeli ground assault. Now, while Israel pounded the area with more airstrikes and said that it kept 2 roads open to let people escape, those people escaping were again hurt and hit by the strikes.
As explosions were seen on the Gaza City skyline Saturday, the Israeli military said its forces were preparing to implement a wide range of operational offensive plans with, quote, an emphasis on significant ground operations. Thousands of Palestinians continue to flee the northern Gaza Strip ahead of an expected Israeli ground assault, while Israel said it kept 2 roads open to let people escape. Outside Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was seen in a government press office video visiting troops and telling them to be ready for the next stage without elaborating. Reuters video showed paramedics and rescue teams operating in an area of northern Gaza, which was hit by an airstrike, forcing them to scramble away quickly. Israel has bombarded the Hamas-run Gaza Strip with unprecedented airstrikes after Hamas fighters stormed through Israeli towns a week ago, gunning down civilians and taking scores of hostages. Some 1,300 people were killed in Israel. More than 2,200 people have been killed in Gaza, according to authorities there. But Israel's attacks on Gaza failed to halt Hamas missile strikes deep into Israeli cities. On Saturday, rockets smashed into a greenhouse in Ashkelon and wounded 4 people at a kibbutz. Back in Gaza, crowds of foreigners hoping to escape waited at the Rafa Border crossing with Egypt. Egypt said its side is open, but traffic has been halted for days because of Israeli strikes. This young British girl said she is desperate to leave.
I'm really in fear. And every time I just have to have the thought of me dying in a bomb in Gaza, it's not a good thing, but it's a really scary thing for me.
A senior U.S. State Department official said the United States was working to open the crossing on Saturday to let some people out and had been in touch with Palestinian Americans who want to leave Gaza.
Well, we showed you what's really happening in the Gaza Strip, in Israel, what's happening up front on Syria, in Lebanon, how is Egypt reacting. Now let's take a look at how the global community is divided over the Israel-Gaza conflict. Amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, pro-Palestinian rallies are being organized in many places around the world. Around 2,000 people gathered in Sydney's Hyde Park on Sunday, many waving Palestinian flags, whilst hundreds of police patrolled the area and nearby streets. Pro-Palestinian supporters also rallied in Tokyo, in Japan, as Israel prepares its ground assault on Gaza. It could happen, like I said, in the next couple of minutes, hours, or days.
No more hiding, no more fear! No more hiding, no more fear! Genocide is crystal clear! Genocide is crystal clear! Not a conflict, not a war! Not a conflict, not a war! Palestine will never die! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Simply because the people, the 700,000 plus people that's left their home.
From Tokyo demonstration.
Message to United Nations.
Message to United Nations.
Keep open our hearts.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine. Palestine.
Free,
Palestine.
Allah.
And if anyone even begins,
Palestine will be free.
But now earlier, thousands of protesters gathered in London, even as you're looking at visuals coming across from Australia. From Australia to London, Jewish communities in the United States, France and elsewhere also held rallies in solidarity with Israel after the Hamas attack from Gaza. So pro-Palestinian rallies and pro-Israel rallies that are happening at the same time.
and if anyone even begins,
Palestine will be free.
and if anyone even begins,
Palestine will be free.
Even as people are protesting, Gazans back home are searching for survivors after the Israeli airstrikes. Some of those startling visuals on your screens, ladies and gentlemen. Several bodies still under the rubble after family homes completely demolished in the Israeli airstrikes. Meanwhile, on the international diplomacy front, China has reacted to the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, with the country's top diplomat Wang Yi expressing concerns about the situation. Now, it's important to understand that in terms of power blocks, Iran, China come together. On the other hand, you've got the United States and Israel on the other hand. Now, Wang Yi expressed concerns about the situation, and it's interesting to note here because Wang Yi stated that Israel's actions have extended beyond the boundaries of self-defense. This statement comes in the wake of Israel's evacuation order for approximately 1.1 million residents in the northern part of Gaza as the Israeli Defense Forces prepare for a ground offensive. During a telephone conversation with Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud on Saturday, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi reiterated China's opposition and condemnation of any actions that cause harm to civilians as they infringe upon the fundamental principles of international law. Wang Yi emphasized that Israel should heed the calls of the international community and the United Nations Secretary General and avoid inflicting collective punishment on the people of Gaza. Amid all this tumultuous turmoil, Indians need to be brought back home as well. And that's exactly what the government of India is doing. Because amid the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, India had launched Operation Ajay to facilitate the return of those who wish to come back home. A fourth flight under Operation Ajay, carrying a batch of 274 Indian nationals, reached Delhi today from Israel. The Indian nationals were received by Union Minister General V.K. Singh at the Delhi airport. You can see each of them being handed a small mini tricolor. A series of attacks on Israeli towns by Hamas terrorists over the weekend triggered fresh tensions in the region.
Because I was there for a tourist purpose and my visa got expired and on 7th we were supposed to return. However, the flight got cancelled at the last moment and then we got it rescheduled and then we come to know about this Operation Ajay and then we got out from there.
इंडिया ने में कोई डिफिकल्टी नहीं हुई गवर्नमेंट का जो भी प्रयास है बहुत सराहनीय है
Israel में Gaza border and towards the Lebanon side Syria it's not good at all it's very like I can't even say it's so bad
गवर्नमेंट वहाँ पे मतलब बहुत पूरी मदद है वहाँ लोगों का पूरा साथ है लोग आपस में एक दूसरे की मदद कर रहे हैं बहुत अच्छा मतलब समर्थन है पूरा लोगों का वहाँ पे अपने लिए अपने एक दूसरे के लिए
इंडिया आने में कोई डिफिकल्टी नहीं हुई एंड हैट्स ऑफ मैं बहुत अच्छा सिस्टम है बहुत अच्छे से इन्होंने मैनेज किया है इतने सारे स्टूडेंट्स को एक साथ लेके आना इट्स रियली हैट्स ऑफ बहुत अच्छा है
Well, so it's always good to see those smiles of our own Indians that have come back home. But the situation is in stark contrast in the Gaza Strip. Now, even as Iran is holding these meetings, Anthony Blinken is holding its own diplomacy, United States is reacting, Egypt is reacting, and Iran has now warned. How will Iran play the sport here? That's going to continue to be our focus even as we've placed our boots on the ground. Nothing that is happening in Israel is being missed by us, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of misinformation, disinformation as well, which is why we're trying to put forth the most corroborated and the most confirmed reports out there for people to consume. What does this meeting indicate, and what does the bombing of the Gaza Strip indicate, and what's going to happen tonight? What's going to happen in the next couple of hours, the next couple of days? It's anybody's guess. Troops and tanks are waiting. It's going to be a two-front war. It's going to be a three-front war. What is going to be Syria's role, and how is Iran going to play the sport? I'm saying it again and again. It's going to be the most interesting to note. With that, it's a wrap on this edition. This is Kabir Naqvi signing off. Lots more coming on News 9 Live. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen.
Literally every major power in the world is gearing up with its own digital currency. And so is India. But India's UPI has taken digital transactions to the next level. So, with UPI already available, what exactly is the use case for the e-rupee?